Today I'm going to be talking about the Firebase Realtime database. First, I'm going to go over Firebase itself a little bit. Firebase is a backend as a service by Google. It offers multiple tools, including authentication, hosting, analytics, real-time database, cloud firestore, and more. Like I said, today we're going to be focusing specifically on real-time database, and even more specifically, real-time database tying in with web applications. So what is the real-time database? It is a NoSQL database that stores data in the cloud. The biggest thing about it is that it syncs data in real time. So what that means is that when a client updates data and sends it to the server will then send that updated data out to all of the clients that are also using or that are also connected to that database. So if I'm person A and I update my information at the doctor's office, it'll be sent to the server that has the doctor's office's patient's information, and then instead of waiting for a request from the doctor's office, it'll send my information back to the doctor's office automatically. So now they have the updated information. Firebase started in 2011. It was its own company, and then it was acquired in 2014 by Google. And since then, it's really picked up it's really gained traction in the field of application development, and Google's just helped make so many improvements. Real-time database works with iOS, Android, web, Flutter, C++, and Unity apps. Some of the pros, it's easy to set up. So all those apps that I just mentioned, Google has SDKs that can go with each of them that make working with the real-time database way easier. In addition, and this is probably the backbone of the real-time database, it uses WebSockets instead of HTTP sockets. So with an HTTP socket, the client will send a request to the server will respond, and then the socket closes. Whereas WebSockets remain open the whole time for communication. And when a WebSocket is open, the client can send to the server, but the server can also send to the client. So it's bi-directional. This really speeds up overhead time. You don't have to worry about opening and closing sockets. It's just going to remain open the whole time that it's being used. And then you also have the security configurations with real-time database. It's a declarative security configuration, so the security rules are defined by the developer, and this is stored in a Firebase in a separate file, so it keeps the security rules away from the project logic, which helps protect your data if, let's say, the app is poorly implemented, or it protects your data from having to go through an additional security server. So it just saves time, and it saves the worry that something is going to happen to your data. Some of the cons are the limited querying. So with that, real-time database queries only allow for one condition per query. So if, say, you wanted to query a movie by movies that came out in 1985 and movies that starred Jack Nicholson, you wouldn't be able to do that with a real-time database query because that's two conditions. In order to do that, you would have to either do multiple queries, or you would have to set another property in your database to say, yes, this is a Jack Nicholson movie from 1985. So there are different ways that you could structure your database to solve this problem, but it's not necessarily something that you would have to deal with in, say, regular SQL databases. Additionally, if you are someone that is used to working with regular SQL databases, there is going to be a learning curve with this NoSQL database by Google. The SDK, there's a lot of documentation available for it, but it's just not as straightforward as regular SQL is. And then you also have working against Firebase real-time database is the fact that it's proprietary. So Google owns it. They're the ones with the servers. They're the ones hosting all of the databases. Um, so if, say, Google wants to stop supporting it, then that means that developers have to go and find an alternative, because what Google says, Google does. And this is actually something that could happen in the future, because when Google released its Cloud Firestore earlier this year in January, it was brought out to be something bigger and better than Real-Time Firebase itself, or Real-Time Database itself. It does have a lot of differences, but it also has a lot of similarities. So in the future, it would be plausible that Google continues with Cloud Firestore instead of the real-time database. All right. Next, we're going to go over how to use the database with a web application project. First, you want to create the project in Firebase, in the Firebase console itself. Then you want to add the Firebase project's config object, which is basically a code snippet saying the information for the specific Firebase project, to the web application project. And then you want to add the JavaScript SDK to the web application project as well. I'm going to go over that in my demo, so if you're not following right now, don't worry about it, we'll get there. And then when you are working on your application, there is a way to develop it locally. First, you want to install the Firebase CLI, then you want to install these commands. So the install the Firebase tools command, and then the Firebase init, which allows you to select which Firebase project you are going to work on locally. And then Firebase serve is the command that you actually enter to start the local web server. All right, then we're going to go into my demo. This is an outline of what we're going to do. We're going to create the project in the Firebase console, then create the project directory on my machine. Then we're going to connect the machine directory to the project in the Firebase console, and then we're going to do our testing. So first, we're going to come over to Firebase. Then we're going to go to our console. Wait for that to kick up. All right. Now here, you click Add a Project, you add your project. We're going to call mine Tamara Demo 459. -4-23. Okay. I accept the terms, and then I'll create my project. We'll wait for that to load. And then what we're going to do next is create the directory on my computer. Okay, new project is ready. Great. You can come over here. We're going to create the real-time database. We're going to do it in test mode so that I can do the reads and writes without worrying about the security rules. Right now you can see the database is empty. I do have a JSON file with some info in it. I'm going to upload that. Open, import. Alright, and now you can see this is what our initial database looks like. And then this is how we're going to add information. So I'm going to have, let's say, a John, and then, John, and then I want to add an age under him. I come over here, press this plus sign, let's say John's 19, and we'll add him, and now he's in with the rest of them. Okay. Next, let me just switch that around real quick. Okay. Next, I'm going to come in, create a new project directory folder. We'll call it Tamara Demo. And I like to use Visual Studio Code when I'm doing my development. So we're going to open up the Tamara Demo file. And then what's nice about Visual Studio is you can open up a terminal window from in here. So now if we go back to my presentation, go back. So I already have the Firebase CLI installed. So I'm not going to run this npm install tools. I will do the Firebase init because that's what's going to allow me to select what project I use. So we'll come back over, Firebase init, enter. Okay, so I want to use the database, so I'll select that, but I also want to use hosting. We didn't go over hosting, but hosting is what's going to allow us to run the web server locally, so we can do our testing locally. So we're going to initialize both of those. And we'll hit enter. We're going to select the project. So we've got Tamara Demo 459423. We'll hit enter. We'll use the default rules file. We'll go ahead and use the public directory, index, sure. So now we've got everything set up in our project folder. We've got the Firebase JSON rules, so this basically just tells us which of the Firebase services we're using. I selected database and hosting. Then we've got rules, so this is where the developers would go to set the specific rules they want to implement. Right now, like I said, we're just using the test mode, so everything's read and write is true. And then this is just keeping track of which file I'm using. You'll see in the public directory also, we've got two HTML files, one's a 404, so if you go to a page that doesn't exist, it'll bring you there, and then it also has a default. So what we're going to do first is run the Firebase serve, so you can take a look at what the default index file looks like. So we'll come over, check it out. This is what we're working with. So I have a index HTML file that I would like to use. So I'm going to pull that up real quick. And we'll just copy this into the project folder I just made. And to connect my project to my my web application, I have to come over to Project Overview, and I want to get the config file information. So this is all it is you're copying this information. It's got the API key, it's got all the information needed to connect to this specific project. So I'll come over here, and I'll put this in my file. So this was connected to another project previously. Now I'm going to connect it to the one I just made. Alright, so we should be good. Alright, so we're going to go back into the database. I'm going to split these guys up so we can watch changes to the database happen as we make them. Okay, so we'll refresh this. And this is the test. We're going to add new entries to the database. So we've got Aaron, John, Tamara, Tim. Let's add someone named, I don't know, Liz. And Liz is 20. So we'll add her. And you'll see that Liz shows up on the left with the information we added with her. And now we can remove Liz. And Liz is no longer in the database anymore. Okay. And what's neat about the real-time database is the fact that it's real-time. So we can come over here, refresh the page, and look. It's got all the information in the database. That's because I had it print to the console, but I had it print on load. So now if I go ahead and let's say I want to add an Amy, and Amy is 23. I can add her, and look, it sends me a new object with the updated information. It's not in my code to pull a new object every time I hit add or every time I hit remove. That's Firebase sending you the updated information in real time. So then if I want to remove Amy, again, I didn't request or I didn't have it in my code to send new information to the console. Firebase sent it to me and updated the previous information that it had already sent me. So that's all that's happening there. And that's the real-time aspect of the real-time database in action. So we can go into the code a little bit further just to kind of take a look at what kind of queries we're working with. So this is the query to show the people in the console right here. All it's doing is going to the name section of the database and it's pulling a snapshot. So it's pulling all the nodes under names. You can see names here, and now it's got Aaron, John, Tamara, Tim. That's what's being pulled by this function snapshot. And then I'm printing it to the console by printing the value of the snapshot. Next, for submitting name, I'm simply pulling the data from the text boxes, and then I'm creating a key value pair, and I'm saving it as data. And then I'm going to update the database with this key value pair. So I'm creating a new node under names called name data, which has my name, and then I'm going to give it data, which is this key value pair age data. So age is the key that you see here, and then age data is going to be the value associated with it. And now to remove name age, again, pulling the data from the text boxes, and then I'm simply going to do a reference to names, and then I'm going to remove the child under names that I specified. So if I wanted to remove Tim, I would pull Tim from the text box, and then I'm removing the child Tim from under names. So if I want to remove Tim, I'm going under names and just removing this whole branch. What I'm doing there is essentially the same as deleting the whole Tim node in the Firebase console. Okay. So that is my presentation on Firebase real-time database. I hope you guys were able to learn some things. Thanks for watching.